You know, when you first sit down to design an interface, you inevitably face this incredibly distinct, almost paralyzing moment.
Oh, the blank screen? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You have your software open, and there's just this completely blank, blindingly white rectangle just like staring back at you.
It's intimidating.
It really is because, I mean, you logically know what the page needs, right? Like, you know there has to be a navigation bar at the top or whatever.
Sure. A hero image, maybe.
Exactly. Some supportive text, maybe a primary call to action button somewhere in the middle. But before you can even begin to draw a single wireframe or, place a single element, you hit this massive psychological wall.
Because you have to decide what it's actually going to look like.
Yes, because before you design the layout, you have to decide on the mood. And that usually starts with one terrifying question, which is, well, what color should any of this actually be?
I mean, it is the moment of truth that stops almost everyone making a digital product right in their tracks.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Because deep down, whether you are a complete beginner or, a seasoned professional, you realize that color isn't just this final coat of paint you slap on at the end of the process.
Right, just to make things look pretty.
Exactly. It's not just decoration. It is literally the structural foundation of the entire user experience.
Which is wild, because I used to think it was just about picking hues that felt nice together. Just relying purely on some vague, artistic intuition.
Like a gut feeling.
Yeah, exactly. Just a gut feeling. But today, we're going to strip away the subjective nature of art and look at the actual mechanics of visual design.
Which is so much more reliable than gut feelings, honestly.
Totally. We are going to pull apart the raw biology, the mathematics, and the psychology of why certain palettes fail spectacularly and why others succeed.
And we have a really fantastic roadmap for this today. We really do. Our entire roadmap for this deep dive comes from a highly specific, incredibly dense resource. We are pulling insights directly from Chapter 10, which is just titled Colors, of a book called Design User Interface.
It's a great chapter.
It's unbelievable. And if you want to actually pull up the exact color wheels, the contrast formulas, and the visual examples we are going to be dissecting today, you can find the book at this link, https://hype4academy.gumroad.com/book.
You'll definitely want to see the visuals for this one.
For sure. In fact, to make it seamless, you can buy the book right now simply by scanning the QR code of that book link provided in the description below.
Just scan it right from your screen.
Yeah, I highly recommend you scan it, grab the chapter, and follow along with us. And while you are doing that, I am explicitly requesting that you follow our show because we are going to continue bringing you these incredibly detailed technical design breakdowns.
And, the career-building content you need to actually thrive in this industry.
Exactly. So getting back to the book, this specific chapter, Chapter 10, is so effective because it tackles the blank canvas problem not with artistic theory, but with functional frameworks.
Right. It gives a junior designer a set of absolute rules and boundaries, which is exactly what you need when you're starting out.
You need guardrails.
You absolutely do. And you cannot effectively break the rules of design until you deeply understand why those rules exist in the first place.
Right.
And more importantly, what those rules are doing to the person sitting on the other side of the screen.
Okay, let's start right there, actually, with the person on the other side of the screen. Because before we can even begin to debate whether a nice teal or like a soft lavender is the right choice for a background, we have to understand the sheer overwhelming power that color holds over the human brain.
It really is overwhelming.
It is. The text makes a claim right out of the gate that I initially thought was honestly a massive exaggeration.
For 90% stat.
Yes, the 90% stat. It states that over 90% of whether a user likes a product comes down solely to the color palette.
Yeah, that's a big number.
It's huge. When I read that, my immediate reaction was to just push back. I thought, 90%. What about the crisp typography?
Or the intuitive layout.
Right, or the slick animations or the brilliant copywriting. Like, all that only accounts for 10%.
It does sound totally hyperbolic until you look at the actual sequence of human visual processing.
Okay, walk me through that.
So the brain operates on strict biological timelines. Long before your cognitive centers can decode the geometric shapes of letters to actually read a headline.
Okay.
And long before your spatial awareness processes the grid layout of a website, your visual cortex has already registered the dominant wavelengths of light hitting your retina.
Wow. So it's literally the first thing to hit the brain.
Exactly. It has already registered the colors, so that 90% figure, it represents an immediate, subconscious, and entirely unavoidable emotional baseline.
So if you mess that up,
If the colors trigger the wrong physiological response, the remaining 10% of your design, your brilliant copy, your perfect typography, it's all fighting a massive, almost impossible uphill battle to change the user's mind.
so it's essentially an emotional short circuit. It just bypasses logic entirely.
It really does. And it is deeply, deeply rooted in evolutionary psychology.
How so?
Well, consider why humans universally associate red with danger, or with errors, or with highly destructive actions like deleting an account or wiping a hard drive.
Right, every delete button is red.
Always. Because in the natural world, red is blood. It is venomous insects, it's fire. The human brain is hardwired to pay immediate adrenaline-fueled attention to that specific wavelength.
That makes total sense.
And then think about green. Green signals lush vegetation, fresh water, and safety.
So that's why we use it for success states.
Exactly. When you make a confirm purchase button in green, you are leaning on millions of years of evolutionary comfort.
You're hacking their survival instincts.
You really are. And if you decide to get creative and swap those, like if you make a severe delete permanently button a soothing, pleasant green, you aren't just making a quirky aesthetic choice.
Right, you're not just being edgy.
No, you are creating biological cognitive dissonance. You are telling the user's brain that a destructive action is completely safe, which deeply confuses and frustrates them on a subconscious level.
Oh man, that completely reframes the concept of branding for me.
How so?
Well, the source material notes something fascinating along these lines. It mentions how users will frequently forget the actual name of a product or a service.
All the time.
Right, and instead they will just refer to it as that blue app or that black and white website.
Yes, exactly.
I was thinking about this in terms of digital real estate. Like in a crowded app store or on a phone screen filled with dozens of icons, a user simply does not have the mental bandwidth to remember every single clever startup name or read every label.
Here we go.
The color literally becomes the mnemonic shortcut.
You are securing real estate in the visual memory center, which is notoriously faster and way more resilient than verbal memory.
So they don't remember the word, they remember the vibe.
Exactly. The brain basically says, look, I don't have the capacity to retrieve the 3-syllable name of this productivity tool, but I have a deeply ingrained neurological shortcut for the specific shade of purple it uses.
That's incredible. So as someone just starting out in UI design, your primary job isn't actually to draw a cool logo or invent a new layout paradigm.
Nope, not at all.
Your very first task is to claim that visual real estate by establishing a cohesive mood through a specific hue.
Yes, because if your palette is inconsistent, or if every page changes colors, you never give the user's brain the chance to build that mnemonic shortcut.
It's like you keep changing your face every time you meet them.
That is a great way to put it. Without a dominant, memorable color scheme, your product essentially becomes invisible in the user's memory.
But wait, if all of this, the emotional response, the 90% preference rate, the memory building, if it's all based on biology, how does our physical hardware actually capture these colors from a glowing piece of glass?
Oh, the hardware.
Yeah, because the text goes surprisingly deep into the anatomical mechanics of the eye here, which feels like, well, required knowledge if we are going to be manipulating light.
You truly cannot design for a digital screen without understanding the biological hardware receiving the signal. You just can't.
So break it down for us.
Okay, so the text provides an essential foundation here.
Yeah.
It points out that the average human can distinguish up to 10 million distinct hues.
10 million.
10 million. And these are broadly categorized into colorful variants and non-colorful variants.
So non-colorful would be.
That encompasses your pure whites, your grays, and your pure blacks.
Okay, but 10 million hues just feels unfathomable. Like, if I look at a sunset, I know there are thousands of gradients happening, but how is the eye processing that staggering amount of data simultaneously?
It all happens through specialized photoreceptor cells located in the retina, primarily the rods and cones.
Right, high school biology coming back to me.
Yeah, exactly. The cones are the crucial component for color vision. And inside these microscopic cones is a highly specific, light-sensitive protein called opsin.
Opsin, O-P-S-I-N.
Correct. But what the book highlights is that there isn't just one generic type of opsin. There are 3 distinct variations, and each one is tuned to react only to specific lengths of light waves.
So it's analogous to having 3 different types of biological radio antennas in your eye?
I love that analogy.
And each antenna is tuned to pick up a completely different frequency of light.
That is a perfect way to visualize it. The text breaks down the three main opsin types perfectly.
Okay, let's hear them.
The first is opsin S. The S basically stands for shortwave.
Shortwaves, got it.
The specific protein catches light wavelengths that measure around 450 nanometers.
So when those shortwaves hit your retina,
When they hit, the opsin S protein fires a signal to your brain, which translates that specific frequency into what we experience as blue and purple hues.
okay, so opsin S is for shortwaves, translating to blues and purples.
Exactly. Next, you have opsin M, which stands for medium waves.
Makes sense.
This protein operates around the 540 nanometer mark. When light hits that frequency, opsin M is stimulated, and this is the biological mechanism responsible for perceiving greens.
Green, so S is blue, M is green.
Right. And finally, we have opsin L for long waves. This antenna handles wavelengths closer to 590 nanometers, which takes care of the entire red spectrum.
So red is the long wave.
Yes. And here's the crazy part. Every single one of those 10 million distinct hues you can perceive is simply your brain decoding different combinations of those three opsin proteins firing at varying intensities.
That is so efficient. I mean, I always assumed human vision was infinitely more complicated than just 3 primary receptors.
It's elegantly simple, actually.
But here is the part of the chapter that absolutely blew my mind. Because we are designers, right? We aren't painting with physical, tactile pigments on a canvas.
No, we are designing for digital displays.
We are literally projecting light out of a screen. And a computer monitor does not have 10 million different colored microscopic light bulbs built into it.
No, it definitely doesn't. It relies entirely on the RGB system, red, green, and blue.
So every pixel on your phone, your tablet, or your television is just a tiny cluster of those 3 specific light emitters.
Yes, and the RGB system wasn't chosen at random. It was explicitly and brilliantly engineered to exploit those 3 exact opsin proteins in the human eye.
Yeah, the text alludes to this, but let's really dig into the physics of this, like this hack. Because when I am in my design software and I select a pure bright yellow for a warning banner,
Yeah.
what is actually physically hitting my eye from the screen? Because there is no yellow bulb.
Right. This is where the difference between the physical world and the digital world becomes vital to understand. In the natural world, a pure yellow object, let's say a lemon, reflects light at a specific singular wavelength of roughly 570 to 580 nanometers.
So if I look at a real physical lemon in my kitchen,
A literal 570 nanometer wave travels through the air and hits your retina.
okay,
But your digital screen cannot produce a 570 nanometer wave. Literally lacks the hardware to emit yellow light.
because it only has red, green, and blue emitters.
Precisely. So to make you experience the color yellow, the screen blasts a red light and a green light at you simultaneously from the exact same microscopic location.
Oh, because the red light stimulates the long wave opsin L and the green light stimulates the medium wave opsin M.
You've got it. And when both of those specific proteins fire intensely at the exact same moment, your visual cortex gets confused.
It's trying to make sense of the conflicting data.
Right. It attempts to average the 2 signals out.
Yeah.
Your brain calculates, well, if I am seeing a strong red signal and a strong green signal coming from the exact same point in space, the source must be the wavelength that exists directly between them on the spectrum.
Which is yellow.
Which is yellow. You are experiencing an elaborate optical illusion. The screen is literally hacking your nervous system, tricking it into seeing a hue that isn't actually being emitted.
That is wild. We are effectively acting as biological hackers every single time we use a color picker.
We really are. We are just choosing which proteins to stimulate and at what intensity.
Okay, so that covers the colorful variants, but what about the non-colorful variant?
How whites and blacks.
Yeah. The source provides this incredibly philosophical definition of black and white that I found fascinating. It states that white reflects a wide range of the visible wave spectrum, while black does the exact opposite. It absorbs everything.
Right, and this touches on the fundamental difference between additive light and subtractive light.
Explain that for us.
Because screens project light, they operate on an additive model. White is what happens when the red, green, and blue subpixels are all turned on and cranked to their absolute maximum intensity.
So they are combining and blasting every possible wavelength they possess directly at your eye.
Yes. Pure black is the total opposite. The pixels simply turn off. They emit absolutely zero light.
You know, I was thinking about this dynamic, like a light sponge versus a light mirror.
Oh, I like that.
Right, because black is the ultimate light sponge. It just sits there, soaking up all the visual energy in that specific area of the screen and giving absolutely nothing back to the viewer.
Exactly.
And white is the ultimate light mirror. It violently reflects all that RGB energy directly into your opsin receptors simultaneously.
Yes, violent is a good word for it.
So when you are designing an interface and you place a black text element on top of a pure white background, you are placing an absolute light sponge directly on top of a blinding light mirror.
Which is precisely why that specific combination creates maximum visual contrast.
That's the extremes.
You are dealing with the absolute extremes of light reflection and light absorption. And this transition in our understanding is really critical.
Why is that?
Because all of this biological hacking, all of this manipulation of opsin proteins, it only matters if the user can actually perceive the shapes those lights are making.
Oh.
Having 10 million hues at your disposal is entirely useless if the user cannot read the text on the Buy Now button.
Which brings us directly to the science of usability.
The most important part.
Yeah, the text makes it incredibly clear that we have to move past theory and into strict, non-negotiable mathematics here.
It does.
It states that color components, specifically brightness and saturation, dictate contrast, and contrast directly impacts readability.
Yep.
This is where we stop talking about aesthetics and start talking about fundamental accessibility, isn't it?
Absolutely. It is the most common trap for a junior designer.
How so? Like, what do they usually do?
Well, you fall in love with a subtle aesthetic. You design an interface using, say, light gray text on a slightly lighter gray background.
Oh, the minimalist look.
Right. And in a perfectly dark studio, on a massive mathematically calibrated 4K monitor, it looks incredibly sleek, modern, and minimalist.
Sure, it looks great on Dribble.
Exactly. But you aren't designing for a dark studio. You are designing for a user who is trying to read that app on their phone outside while walking down the street with the midday sun glaring off the glass of their screen.
And in that environment.
In that environment, your subtle design is completely invisible.
Completely. I visualize contrast as being the audio volume for the eyes.
Oh, that's a brilliant way to frame it.
Right. So imagine the user's screen is a crowded, noisy room full of distractions. The contrast ratio you choose is the literal volume at which your UI elements are speaking.
Yes.
If you choose a low contrast ratio, say a light blue button on a medium blue background, it is the equivalent of the button whispering in that crowded room.
They won't hear it.
The user is effectively deaf to what the button is trying to communicate. They simply cannot perceive the message. But if you increase the contrast, you turn the volume up to a clear, conversational speaking voice.
Everyone can hear it.
Exactly. And because this visual volume is so critical to the basic function of software, the industry does not leave it up to guesswork, do they?
No, not at all. The book introduces the absolute gold standard for this, which is WCAG 2.0.
Okay, spell that out for us.
That stands for the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. You will encounter this acronym constantly throughout your design career.
It's the law of the land, basically.
It is. And the text outlines that WCAG defines 3 specific contrast levels, which are dependent on the size of the UI element you are designing.
Let's clearly define those tiers, because this is like essential vocabulary for anyone serious about this career.
Sure. You have level A, which represents low contrast. You have level AA, which is average contrast. And you have level AAA, which requires exceptionally high contrast.
Okay, so A, AA, and AAA.
Right. And the source provides the exact mathematical metrics. Level AA for normal-sized text requires a minimum contrast ratio of 4.5 to 1.
4.5 to 1.
And level AAA requires a ratio of 7.0 to 1.
I want to pause on that specific number for a second. 4.5 to 1.
It's the magic number.
The book explicitly states this as the golden rule for beginners, right?
Yeah.
Like, when designing your interface, you must remember to have at least a 4.5 to 1 contrast ratio, the AA standard, for all of your most crucial UI elements.
Yes, that is non-negotiable for crucial elements. We are talking about buttons, forms, navigational links, and essential text.
So what does that ratio actually mean, 4.5 to 1?
So that 4.5 to 1 ratio is based on a calculation of relative luminance.
Relative luminance, okay.
Relative luminance measures how bright a color appears to the human eye, factoring in biological realities like the fact that our eyes are naturally more sensitive to green wavelengths than blue ones.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's not just a flat metric.
No, it accounts for human biology. The math calculates the luminance of your text color against the luminance of your background color, and the resulting gap must meet that 4.5 threshold to be considered legible for the vast majority of the population.
Including users with visual impairments.
Exactly. It's about accessibility for everyone.
Now, the text does offer a slight concession, noting that you can ignore these strict contrast rules for purely decorative elements.
Right, things that don't carry essential information.
But for function, for anything the user must read or interact with, 4.5 to 1 is the absolute unbreakable baseline.
You cannot go below it.
But I have to put myself in the shoes of someone staring at their design software here. Hearing about relative luminance algorithms sounds deeply intimidating.
Oh, it sounds like you need a math degree.
Exactly. How is a beginner supposed to ensure a 4.5 to 1 ratio? You can't just eyeball a slightly muted teal and a soft green background and instinctively know if the math checks out.
You absolutely cannot eyeball it, and the text reassures us that you shouldn't even try.
Okay, good.
Human perception of contrast is incredibly flawed, especially when colors are placed adjacent to one another.
Right, optical illusions and all that.
Exactly. The book notes that you can instantly test your contrast levels by using dedicated plugins right inside your design tool, or by using free online calculators.
Oh, so the tools do it for you?
Yes. You simply input the hex code of your background and the hex code of your text, and the software runs the relative luminance algorithm in milliseconds.
Amazing.
It gives you a simple pass or fail grade based on the WCAG standards.
Well, that entirely removes the guesswork.
It really does.
So there is basically zero excuse for unreadable text when the tools do the math for you.
None at all.
Okay, so we now understand the biology of how we perceive light, we understand the emotional weight those wavelengths carry, and we have the strict mathematical boundaries to ensure our text is actually readable.
We have the foundation.
We do! But knowing the rules of light doesn't tell you how to paint the house, you know?
No, it doesn't.
How do we actually start putting colors together into a cohesive system?
Well, according to the source material, defining a structured color palette is a mandatory step in the design process.
Mandatory.
It is non-negotiable. You cannot just pick colors at random on a screen-by-screen basis.
Wait.
A defined palette achieves 3 critical objectives. First, it guarantees color consistency across the entire product.
Okay.
Second, it establishes a clear visual hierarchy telling the user what is most important.
Right.
And third, it instantly telegraphs action types.
Right, because if every button on every page is a different color, the user is forced to relearn how your app functions with every single click.
Which is exhausting.
You need a predictable system. And the book lists the specific mandatory ingredients that make up a modern UI palette. Let's walk through that blueprint.
Sure. The first required component is neutral colors.
Neutrals.
Yes, neutrals are the architectural scaffolding of your interface. These are your pure whites, your varying shades of gray, and your blacks.
So they aren't the star of the show.
No, they make up the background canvas, the subtle borders, the structural dividers, and the secondary text.
They occupy the vast majority of the physical real estate on the screen, but they are designed to draw the absolute least amount of attention.
Perfectly said, yes.
Okay, next we have the accent colors. This is usually what people think of when they think of branding, right?
Exactly. The accent color is the personality of the product.
It's the blue in the Blue app.
Right. But beyond branding, it is your primary functional tool for directing attention. You use your accent color to say, look right here, click this specific button.
So it sits at the very top of your visual hierarchy.
It does.
And then there's the third ingredient, which I think is probably the most frequently overlooked step by junior designers.
Oh, without a doubt. Notification colors.
Yes. Why is that so commonly missed?
It happens constantly. A designer will spend hours perfectly calibrating their neutral grays and finding the absolute perfect shade of electric blue for their accent color.
Getting it just right.
And they think the palette is finished. But then a user interacts with the app, fills out a long registration form, and makes a formatting error.
Oh no.
Exactly. How does the interface communicate that mistake? If the app only utilizes blue and gray, the error message visually blends right into the rest of the page.
Because there's no contrast in meaning.
Exactly. The source explicitly mandates the inclusion of notification colors. You need green to signal success and red to signal failure.
And we circle right back to evolutionary psychology.
We do.
We need that hardwired, adrenaline-inducing red signal to instantly communicate, stop, something requires your immediate attention.
And they know it without even having to consciously read the error text?
The book notes, these are especially vital if forms or data entry are an essential part of your app's functionality.
You simply cannot leave any ambiguity in the user's mind about whether their action was successful or if it failed.
So a palette is fundamentally broken if it lacks clear notification hues.
It's incomplete, yes.
But even knowing that blueprint, knowing you need neutrals, an accent, a red, and a green staring at that blank canvas is still daunting.
Because you still have 10 million hues to choose from.
Exactly. But the text offers a piece of advice here that I think relieves an immense amount of pressure. It suggests relying heavily on online color palette generators.
Yes. There is a persistent, really damaging myth among beginners that to be a real designer, you must instinctively be able to calculate the mathematical harmony of every hex code in your head.
Like you have to be some kind of color savant.
Exactly. And the text actively dismantles that idea. It explicitly states that you can and should find color palette generators online to help you choose the right hues and shades that match your initial color idea.
I think it's important to frame this correctly, though. Using a generator is not a cheat code.
No, not at all.
It is a necessary navigational compass. You are still the captain of the ship.
You have to set the course.
Right. You have to look at the project requirements and decide the strategic destination. For example, this is a healthcare app, so I need a trustworthy, sterile, calming blue as my primary anchor.
That's the design decision.
But once you make that strategic choice, you let the algorithm do the heavy lifting.
Exactly.
The generator acts as the compass, finding the exact secondary grays, the specific reds, and the harmonious greens that mathematically align with your anchor blue on the color wheel.
You make the strategic decisions, and the tool handles the complex math of harmony.
That is the optimal way to utilize those tools.
It really is.
Now, once you are ready to construct that palette, the source text provides two major architectural strategies.
Yes, two very different approaches.
These are the two fundamentally different approaches to combining colors on the wheel, and they act as the core weapons in a beginner's arsenal.
Well, let's get into them.
Let's dive deep into the first strategy outlined in the chapter, the analogous approach. The text characterizes this as a safe, harmonious starting point, but warns that it carries a very specific, dangerous trap.
So, okay, what exactly is an analogous palette then? Like, how does the book define it?
The text defines an analogous palette as a collection of colors that sit closely together, directly next to each other on the traditional color wheel.
Okay, so give me an example.
For example, if you select a standard blue as your primary hue, your analogous colors would be the teal located immediately to its left, and perhaps a blue-purple located immediately to its right. So they are immediate neighbors on the light spectrum.
Exactly.
But why does being neighbors make them inherently safe?
It goes right back to the biology of the eye that we talked about earlier.
Oh, with the opsons.
Yes. Because these colors sit so closely together on the spectrum, they share a massive amount of wavelength overlap.
Okay, I think I see where this is going.
Moving your eye from a 450 nanometer blue to a 470 nanometer teal is an incredibly minor adjustment for the opsin proteins.
It's not a huge leap.
There is no jarring biological shift required to process the change. Therefore, the text notes that this naturally allows for many sets of fitting hues that inherently look good together.
So it's basically hard to mess up.
It is actually quite difficult to make analogous colors actively clash. The transition between them is biologically smooth and aesthetically pleasant.
I compare analogous colors to a group of siblings standing together in a family photo.
Oh, that's a great visual.
Right. They look fantastic together because they share the same underlying DNA. The transition from one phase to the next feels incredibly cohesive and natural.
It does.
But there is a massive trap here. The source points out a fatal flaw inherent to the analogous approach.
Yes, the specific warning from the text is that the downside of choosing an analogous palette is an inherently lower contrast between the colors compared to other palettes.
And this goes back to the WCK guidelines.
Yes.
Let's look back at the sibling analogy. Up close, they look harmonious. But if you step 50 feet back from that family photo, all of those distinct faces kind of blur into one amorphous shape.
You can't tell them apart.
Exactly. Because they are so similar in their core makeup, they don't stand out from one another. If you build an entire interface using a medium blue background, a slightly darker blue button, and medium teal text,
You fail.
you are going to completely fail that WCK 4.5:1 contrast ratio test we established earlier.
The visual volume is simply too low.
Every element on the screen is whispering.
You have effectively traded functional readability for aesthetic harmony.
Which is useless.
Right. It is. You lose your visual hierarchy because nothing on the screen possesses the contrast necessary to jump out and grab the user's attention.
But the chapter doesn't just diagnose the problem, does it? It provides the specific mechanical solution.
It does.
To rescue an analogous palette, the book states you must actively try experimenting with the shades.
Yes, shades.
So explain what experimenting with shades actually accomplishes mathematically to fix the contrast problem.
It requires understanding the difference between manipulating hue and manipulating brightness.
Okay.
In an analogous palette, your hue is locked in place. You have restricted yourself to that tiny slice of the color wheel between blue and teal.
Right, you can't just throw a yellow in there.
Because you cannot introduce a completely different color like a bright yellow to create contrast, you are forced to drastically alter the lightness and darkness of the hues you are allowed to use.
You have to push the boundaries of relative luminance.
Precisely. You have to force your dark blue elements to be so incredibly dark that they are bordering on pure black. And you must force your light teal elements to be so pale they are bordering on pure white.
That stretches the gap.
Exactly. You achieve that necessary 4.5 to 1 mathematical gap, not through differing colors, but through extreme variations in light and shadow.
Okay, so for a beginner, analogous is the safest bet to avoid designing an interface that looks visually offensive or disjointed.
It is.
But to prevent it from becoming an unreadable, blurry failure, you have to stretch the brightness values to their absolute extremes to guarantee readability.
It requires discipline. But when executed correctly, an analogous UI utilizing extreme shades looks incredibly sophisticated, cohesive, and highly professional.
But what happens when a designer needs to graduate from that safe, harmonious neighborhood?
When they want to make some noise.
Exactly. What if the project doesn't call for subtle sophistication? What if it demands maximum visual impact, something that absolutely screams for the user's attention?
Then you need the second strategy.
Right. That brings us to the second major strategy in the book, the complementary approach. High impact, but incredibly high risk.
So if analogous colors are next door neighbors,
Yeah.
complementary colors live on opposite sides of the planet.
Right.
The text defines the complementary palette as utilizing colors that sit directly across from each other on the color wheel.
Give me some examples.
Blue and orange, purple and yellow, red and green.
Okay, so this choice immediately solves the core problem we just wrestled with in the analogous palette, doesn't it? Contrast is practically guaranteed.
Absolutely guaranteed. The source explicitly notes that this method instantly helps achieve a high contrast between the hues.
Because of the biology.
Yes. Because you are jumping across the entire visible spectrum, you are forcing entirely different opsin receptors in the eye to fire simultaneously.
You are hitting the shortwave receiver and the longwave receiver at the exact same time.
The visual difference is massive, immediate, and mathematically guaranteed.
But that massive biological difference introduces a new, deeply uncomfortable physical problem, doesn't it?
It does. The danger of clashing.
Explain clashing on a biological level.
When you place a pure, highly saturated blue directly adjacent to a pure, highly saturated orange, the two colors actively fight each other for dominance in the eye.
Fight each other.
Literally.
Huh?
The edges where the two colors meet actually appear to physically vibrate or blur.
Oh, I've seen that. It kind of hurts to look at.
Yes, this is a recognized optical phenomenon called chromostereopsis.
Chromostereopsis.
Right. The human eye physically struggles to focus on both extremes of the light spectrum at the exact same depth and at maximum intensity.
It's overloading the hardware.
Exactly. The text explicitly warns designers to keep this phenomenon in mind and strictly avoid clashing colors by rigorously testing their overlapping contrast.
And this is where the book delivers what I consider to be the most valuable technical metric for a beginner trying to navigate this risk.
The 85-90 rule.
Yes. I call it the 85-90 rule. It is a mathematical guardrail designed specifically to save you from giving your users a literal migraine.
It's a lifesaver.
So let's break down the 85% rule first.
The source states that the best way to find a matching complementary set without inducing that clashing vibration is by choosing colors with less than 85% saturation.
Saturation being the purity or the intensity of the color wave?
Correct. By pulling the saturation slider down below 85%, you are essentially mixing a percentage of gray into the pure pigment.
You are muting it.
You are muting the raw intensity of the light wave.
Yep.
A slightly muted slate blue placed next to a slightly muted burnt orange looks incredibly stylish, legible, and clear.
But a 100% pure neon blue placed directly next to a 100% pure neon orange.
It looks like a cheap plastic toy. It vibrates uncomfortably.
Okay, so that's the 85% part. And then there's a second metric, which acts as a strict boundary for junior designers, the 90% overall rule.
Yes. The text advises, as a golden rule, that a good practice would be to avoid exceeding 90% color saturation overall until you get comfortable enough with color theory to manually choose the right combinations.
It even refers to operating within a safe saturation area.
Yes.
Yeah.
Basically, until you have mastered the complex optical nuances of how colors interact, stay entirely out of the top 10% of the saturation spectrum.
This is just too dangerous.
It is simply too volatile and too visually loud for standard UI design.
I want to spend some time exploring the contextual application of these rules, though, because the book provides some brilliant, real-world examples of when you should strictly adhere to them and when you should actively, purposefully break them.
Oh, context is everything.
It really is. So let's say I actually want that visual vibration. I want the user's opsin receptors firing at maximum capacity to generate a physiological response. When does that approach actually work?
Well, the text advises that if you do decide to use highly saturated, very contrasting colors, you must try to do so purposefully.
Purposefully. So give me an example.
It points out that this aggressive approach can work beautifully on an event page or a highly anticipated product launch page.
Okay, think about the emotional context there. If you are designing a landing page for an electronic music festival or, the countdown page for an exclusive limited edition sneaker drop.
You want the interface to feel loud.
Yes, you want it to feel frantic, high energy, and exciting. You actively want to induce a slight sense of adrenaline in the user.
So in that case, crank the saturation to 100% and let those complementary colors vibrate. It perfectly matches the emotional goal of the product.
However, the text provides a massive, strict warning for the opposite context.
It does.
It states clearly that this highly saturated, highly contrasting approach may not be the best choice for a news portal, an e-store, or a banking application.
The banking app example is perfect.
It is the perfect distillation of everything we have discussed today, from biology to psychology.
Let's evaluate the emotional state of that user.
Okay, if I am opening my banking app on my phone to check if my mortgage payment cleared, or, to look at the balance of my life savings, I am likely already experiencing a low hum of baseline anxiety.
Most people are when dealing with money.
Exactly. So the emotion I desperately need the interface to project is stability, absolute security, and calm professionalism.
Right.
If my account balance is displayed in a vibrating 100% saturated neon green text set against a 100% saturated hot pink background,
You would feel an immediate visceral sense of distrust.
I would panic.
The biological discomfort of the clashing colors would subconsciously translate into psychological discomfort with the institution handling your money.
It would feel chaotic.
Yeah.
And chaos is the absolute last concept you want associated with your life savings.
Exactly.
That is why taming the saturation, living within those safe saturation areas, defined by the 85-90 rule, is the absolute secret to unlocking the power of complementary colors.
It allows you to utilize the massive functional readability of high contrast. But by muting the saturation, you remove the anxiety and the visual vibration.
You make it look highly professional rather than looking like a flyer for a rave.
It proves that design is a constant, delicate balancing act. You require contrast to satisfy the strict mathematics of readability, but you require controlled saturation to satisfy the psychology of user comfort.
The complementary palette provides you with the ultimate tool for contrast, but it demands absolute discipline in how you wield its saturation.
It really does.
Wow. We have unpacked a truly tremendous amount of science, math, and strategy today.
We covered a lot of ground.
We did. We went from the evolutionary psychology of why red triggers danger, deep into the biology of opsin proteins and the RGB hack of the digital screen.
The lemon hack.
Yes, the lemon hack. We established the unbreakable mathematical laws of relative luminance with the WCK 4.5:1 contrast ratio.
And we armed you with the safe, shade-driven harmony of the analogous palette.
Alongside the high-impact, high-risk power of the complementary palette, governed strictly by the 85-90 saturation rule.
So you are no longer staring at a blank, terrifying canvas with zero direction.
Exactly. You have a mathematical and biological compass to guide every decision you make.
It is an incredibly powerful foundation. I mean, if you apply strictly the constraints and frameworks from this one single chapter, your interfaces will instantly become drastically more accessible, more cohesive, and vastly more emotionally resonant with your users.
But I'm not going to let you leave today without a little bit of a cliffhanger.
Oh, what cliffhanger?
Yeah, there is one final, incredibly provocative thought straight from the very end of our source text. It is a debate that has caused massive, polarizing arguments in design communities for years.
I think I know what this is.
The text explicitly states, pure black color doesn't exist.
Yes. The pure black controversy.
It goes on to note that using pure black, which is hex code #0000000 in a digital product, has been causing controversy for a few years now. And it leaves the reader with a simple question: should you use it?
It remains one of the most hotly contested, highly nuanced arguments among senior UI designers today.
I mean, think about the physics we discussed earlier. Pure black is the ultimate light sponge. On an OLED screen, the pixels literally turn off, they die.
Right.
So why would that mathematical absolute 0.00000 cause such an uproar in the professional design world? What does putting pure, unadulterated, dead darkness next to a bright, emitting light actually do to the human eye on a biological level?
It's a fascinating question.
I'm not going to answer that for you today. I want you to let that question linger. I want you to use that specific controversy as the very next step in your own research journey.
Yet of a fascinating rabbit hole that challenges almost everything you assume about how light and digital screens interact.
It really is. And to truly master the concepts we actually did cover today, you absolutely need to dive into the source material for yourself. Everything we broke down, every rule and framework came directly from Chapter 10, Colors of the Book Design User Interface.
It's an essential read.
Again, here's the exact link to find it, https://hype4academy.gumroad.com/louisbook. My explicit instruction to you is to invest in your craft and buy the book right now, simply by scanning the QR code of that book link we have provided in the description below.
Don't guess, use the math.
Exactly. Do not rely on guesswork. Invest in the math and the science behind your work. And finally, I am explicitly requesting that you follow our show right now.
We've got so much more to cover.
We are going to continue tearing down these complex technical concepts and providing the exact career-building content you need to accelerate your path in the design industry. Follow the show, scan the code, grab the book, and we will see you on the next deep dive.